You say you're fine, but I can see right through. You're holding your secrets for way too long. This can't keep going on. With every lie, they keep on hurting you, getting away with everything they do. This can't keep going on. No, we're gonna find them, and I'm gonna fight for you. They better start hiding. We'll be running with the lions, lions. We'll be running with the lions, lions. They can't run, they can't hide. We won't stop until they're down. We'll be running with the lions, lions.
Hello, everyone. Happy first Sunday in June. Well, I have to tell you that it is pretty warm here in San Diego. Well, maybe not really warm, but really humid. And that made me realize that I kind of felt like I was in Florida again because the humidity here right now is about 95%. Now, then I remembered that that's exactly why I moved to California from Florida. So, well, I guess the humidity wound up just following me, unfortunately. But I hope everybody has had a fabulous weekend so far. And I am so excited about this episode today, as I always am about every episode. So, for those of you who are new, this is Gloves Off. This is not just a show, this is a space for bold truth, for disruption, and where there's unapologetic clarity. And often I interview people like our guest today who are leaders in the field, who speak their mind, who want to see a change being made. And those are the people that I love interviewing every week on this show. So if you're new, that's what you're in for today. And if you've been watching and tuning in every week, well, then I thank you very much for doing that. So a little shameless plug for those of you who have not subscribed to my YouTube channel. That's probably the easiest place to watch my show. There's a QR code on the screen. You can check it out and you can subscribe. And this way you could see all of the shows, all of the previous shows under the live tab. And you can also watch the shows live. So I think that's the easiest way to watch. So I'm really excited about today's episode, but before we get into it, I have to introduce my sponsor, Jeremy Meineke. So I have to say I've been working out with Jeremy for, 6 or 8 weeks now. I honestly don't know, but I have seen the most amazing improvement in my strength to the point that when I don't work out with him, one thing I'm really proud of, when I don't work out with him and I go to other places to work out, I do a lot of everything. So today I noticed that I was able to just knock out push-ups so easily. And no, I wasn't doing them on my knees. I was doing full-on push-ups, and I can actually do 50 push-ups at one time, which I'm really, really proud of. And I squat regularly. So it has just upped my fitness level to a whole new place. So I'm grateful. So, if you want to check them out, you can scan that QR code. I hope you already did, or actually let me put it back up real quick. That way you can get a free quick consultation with him so he can see what your goals are and see if you're a good fit. And he also does virtual consultations as well. Hopefully that was long enough for you guys to get the QR code. And so I am excited today because, as you guys know, or maybe you don't know, I've been in the aesthetic industry for over 20 years. I had my own med spa for many years, and now I consult with aesthetic providers. So in that, I love collaborating with other businesses, and I'm very specific and I'm very clear on who I want to work with and who I want to collaborate with. And it's nice when other businesses are like that as well, because a lot of our businesses have some things and some ways, old paradigms that need to be changed and cleaned out, and to make room for new leadership. And that's what's exciting about what Melissa Singleton is doing. So she has been in the aesthetic industry for about as long as I have, I think around the 20-year mark. So she is the founder of Aesthetics HQ. And she likes to say that it's the open table of aesthetics. So basically, they're connecting providers with clients, which I love. And again, she found a gap in the industry. So and then she acted on it and started this company, which you got to love when people see a gap in the industry and then decide to disrupt it and change it. She was also a national trainer for Galderma, and so she's trained so many clients. And what one funny story that I think I was going to wait to tell, but I think I'm going to say it now, was that she and I met and connected on LinkedIn because obviously we have shared interests. But then we found out later, because she's in Jacksonville, Florida, and that's where I was. We had actually crossed paths before, and it was probably 10 years ago. So it's funny how the universe works to put people together. So I'm really excited to dive into this. So let's invite Melissa Singleton. Well, it
Hi.
really helps if I put you on screen, which I forgot to do.
All good. All good. Excited to be here. I absolutely am thrilled to be on Gloves Off and absolutely just love how our story is writing itself. The fact that we met before when I came to the office and trained one of your injectors. So, yes, the universe has brought us together for a purpose, and I'm excited to talk about it and see how our future collaboration is.
100%. Well, I remember the first day that you and I met on a Zoom call because, of course, now we live on opposite coasts. But although I have to say, right now, I feel like I live in Florida, but that's a whole different story.
Right.
But even so, when we had realized that we had connected once before, I remember the first time thinking, she really looks very, very familiar.
Right, exactly. But when you've been in the industry almost 20 years, it's like, did I see you at the grocery store? Were you a patient? Like, it's hard to even know faces, but you do recognize them. It's just how do you place them, So I
Yeah.
just love how that story came together, and we met a long time ago. So just happy to get this future going and the collaboration and what you're doing for the aesthetic providers. There's just a space and industry that is growing tremendously, and we just need all the resources we can to actually help bring some transparency and the help that it needs, the support that it needs on both sides of the industry, providers or clients or patients.
Absolutely. Because you know what? For the audience out there watching, love it or hate it, aesthetics is here to stay. It really is. It's a growing industry. It's, billions of dollars. It's not going anywhere.
Absolutely.
But as you and I have talked about in the past, there are some real changes that the industry could definitely benefit from. So, but before we get into all that, I want to talk about you first and just, your past as a trainer, how that transitioned into starting your own company, because that's exciting.
Yeah, it's interesting how the story unfolded. Majority of my career, well, I can say half of my career was at the University of Florida.
Go
And
Gators.
Oh, Gators, exactly. Double Gator, right? And I worked there at the Department of Dermatology. I taught in the School of PA Studies, which was in the College of Medicine. And the nice part about being in academics, like education is the forefront of everything that we do. We're constantly being updated on the educational component of it. And when I was doing derm, doing aesthetics, obviously it's a different kind of animal when you're at a university, but when I left UF, that's when I was recruited by Galderma to be a national faculty trainer. And that's what brought me into a lot of offices and trained hundreds, maybe even thousands at this point. It's almost been 9 years since I've been a trainer. And, as an injector, the biggest gap I was seeing on both sides is there is no centralized educational hub. And reading studies that say 67% of patients or clients get their information from unverified sources like social media. There's really no centralized place. And I was raised that if you see a problem, create a solution. And the educational component came right back out, and I said, you know what, let's go ahead and make this a safer place, because I'm sure you can bet that you see complications, and it's sad, it's heartbreaking, and some of those complications should have never happened. Not to say that complications are something you can completely avoid. You can't. It's just being in medicine. But some of the complications I would see just was not necessary. And it was secondary to inadequate training, secondary to, unfortunately, now social media is seen as one of the qualifiers. And if you've got a lot of followers, it has this equation of having more skill. And that's not it. Like, tell me who, if you're looking for a cardiologist, are you going on Instagram? No.
No.
Why?
And
Because
this is a pet peeve of mine. I think we've talked about this before, but before we get into that, I'm going to backtrack just a little bit because I want to hear who raised you in that way. If there's a problem, find a solution. I want to hear a little bit more about that.
yeah, well, my dad was in the military. My mother also very much that person that says, well, what are you going to do about it? And it was ingrained inside of me. Like, yeah, you can come say something, but have a solution about it. And, that's my biggest thing too. Like every time I've gone out to something, if I see a problem, I'm going to try to figure out a solution. And some of the solutions were much greater than some of the other people could be able to tackle on their own. So I said, you know what? I'm taking my educational experience. I'm taking that part of me that I just can't turn a blind eye anymore. And let's just go ahead and really try to help reframe this industry in a way that has a little bit more accessibility for people that when they want to find the knowledge, it's there for them because we all know knowledge is power. So that definitely, it's a blessing and a curse because that whole thing follows me in my house. If I see a problem, I'm in there trying to YouTube it, trying to figure it out. But I took my aesthetic education, anatomy that I've studied and gone to so many cadaver courses and just really tried to make it applicable for patients to truly understand the objectives, having these animated videos made, one of a kind, they didn't exist before, just really giving people this overview. Because if you understand, then you're going to be able to make a more qualified decision. You're going to be able to figure out if this is the best path for you. And so by the time you get to your injector that you found on Aesthetics HQ, you already know about what you want to do. And all they're going to do is help you lay out that aesthetic plan for you instead of having to explain everything from scratch.
And that is so amazing, not only for the client or the patient that comes in, because they start with a basic level of education as opposed to zero, but from the provider standpoint, these people aren't starting from scratch. They've already learned something and they know the basics, and perhaps they have some other questions, specific questions. And that is perfect. It's kind of a funny story, but I used to do the same thing in my ear, nose, and throat practice and my med spa. I created videos, my own little videos of me talking about the procedure. Because that way they knew, because I was saying the same things all the time.
Over again.
I got tired of hearing myself.
Repeat.
Yep. And so I was like, forget it. I'm making a video. So what happened was the staff just to put the video in there. I went in after to make sure they had any specific questions, but at least they had the fundamental knowledge and I didn't have to say the same things over and over again. It was the saving grace. So basically you took that to a whole nother level, which is awesome.
Absolutely. And go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, so when did that flip switch for you that you were like, I'm starting this company? I mean, clearly you had the problem and you identified the solution, but what was that turning point for you?
I think it was a few things. One, I had it was a pretty bad complication that I saw from a patient that found me. She was seen by somebody else and she went through the whole story. They had a lot of followers. She even drove to see them. And she came to see me and it was a pretty bad complication. Mm-hmm. And it was heartbreaking. She's 23, devastated, and has got some severe complications that really shouldn't have been, it shouldn't have never happened, honestly. And looking at that moment, I go into offices, I train hundreds, probably thousands at this point of injectors, and that centralized core issue is still there. Education. It's education that is missing so that clients can actually make a educated decision and not rely on social media. And I hear the same issues when I'm in the office training them. It's all about how do I get more followers? How do I get this? And when did that become the standard to be able to find a qualified injector? Like, I'm 47. I grew up without social media. So, there are a lot of people that have practiced through word of mouth. And that's how it was 20 years ago. You would find people would find you based off of word of mouth. And now it's not that. It's a popularity contest. And I'm not knocking social media. There's been a lot of awareness. There's some positivities that come from it. But in that, especially in this aesthetic space, it has become the go-to source, and it shouldn't be, because there's not that qualified, vetted education that people are receiving, and being able to really source through what they're looking for and finding that credentials, the Google ratings. There's so many different steps that people have to go through before they can make a decision or a qualified decision. So I just really wanted to put it together, and it happened. The idea happened back in 2023, but of course, probably as you know, when you're building something, it takes time. It's like
Mhm.
building a baby. You can't see it until it's ready to be delivered. So
Yeah.
we pushed Aesthetics HQ platform that has over 400 procedures out into the space. We launched it at the end of August, is when we really went into the Google arena, because we don't exist until Google sees us. So it took a little bit of time, but Aesthetics HQ has now come to full life, and we're just excited to be on the forefront. We just launched our first AI platform for aesthetics, so making it a lot easier for people to be able to find the aesthetic information. And everybody knows AI, but if you go on Google, you don't know that all of that is being pulled from medically vetted, written information by doctors and providers in the space. It could be a magazine article that quotes something, and AI is going to attribute it within a summary. And the downside to the Google AI is that, yeah, you may get some good information on there, but then you still have to source your providers. You still have to find the Google ratings. You still have to go find their before and afters. So what we've done is we've centralized all of that, have AI on there, and you can guarantee everything that AI spits out on our platform is only from the medically vetted content that was written.
Sorry, I just clicked something and something showed up accidentally.
All good.
It's so important, though, what you guys are doing, because it is hard for patients to really understand these procedures in depth, especially when they have to flush through so many different sources and whatnot. And like we were talking about, we've talked about the social media issue. I've actually seen providers, many providers actually, that are they do feel that this is quite the popularity contest, and they're very vested in their social media presence. And I'm not saying that just because they have a really good social media presence, they're unqualified or what. That we can't make that correlation, but we also cannot assume just because they have quite the following. So there are some providers that I've seen like come up for awards and all these things, but they've been injecting for less than a year.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
I'm like, come on. I don't know. I can't. I just can't. I
Yeah.
mean, if you've been injecting for less than a year, you don't know everything you need to know. I was injecting for over 20 years, and I still don't think I know everything I need to know. So it just goes to show you how the industry kind of has evolved, because we are in the same kind of generation where we didn't grow up with social media. We didn't have all these things, and everything was word of mouth. I built my whole practice on word of mouth.
Yeah.
I had my website and all that, but I don't even know that people even visited those all that much back in the day. I started my practice in 2003.
Right.
So, I mean, again, as time went on, probably people did, but I don't know, to be honest with you, I didn't even keep up with all that stuff back
Right.
then. I had
Right.
such a big practice booming from word of mouth. And
Absolutely.
I truly think that there needs to be better ways to put patients and providers together, like what you've created. And, honestly, word of mouth is great. It still is.
It really is. And it's kind of one of those things, especially when you're looking at this industry alone, right? Because you say 10 years ago, there was such a stigma when somebody said, "Oh, I'm going to go get some injectables," because you automatically thought you're going to look unnatural, or it's going to look like the Hollywood people that have had some really bad results. So,
Right.
like, fast forward, social media has helped to destigmatize and to help
True.
bring awareness to this industry. But in that, this is probably one of the only spaces that has truly become more of an algorithm thing to have visibility for those qualified providers that truly are doing good work. If you're not in the algo, you're not going to be found. And how do you get sourced? Like, if you're in Google, good luck, because
Mhm.
Google also doesn't have this huge way, especially if you're not constantly updating your content on your website, your SEO ranking is going to be low. So for people to discover you on Google, that's also a struggle. And the nice part about Aesthetics HQ is I have people doing that. That's my whole business, is updating the SEO to make sure we're getting found on these keywords, making sure that patients which I'm proud to say at this moment, we have about 36,000 active patients, almost 37 active, yeah, coming to the site. And it's not just in this area. Like people are looking at the site from all over. I can see them where they're at, where they're looking, what they're looking at. We have a heat map, and people really need this education. We're finding that they're receiving it. So the beauty is we're building something that people actually are visiting and they're using and they're watching. I think the average is about 3 videos per session. Some people spend even 30 minutes on there. Like you can go down any rabbit hole, but most oftentimes people kind of have an idea of what they're interested in. And the nice part about it is you can find multiple other procedures on there. And I always say you don't know what you don't know. So how do you know what procedures are out there? You don't,
Exactly. You
unless
don't.
you know what to look for on Google.
Right.
Well, you can come to Aesthetics HQ and you can find, like I said, we've got 400 procedures, content, devices, all the devices that I know about in the US. We're even partnering with some companies that are starting to launch devices here. So it's truly one of those things where it's really creating this marketplace to help people, patients, find what they're looking for, but providers to gain another visibility channel. And by no measure am I saying we're shutting down social media, we're trying to replace social media. That is not the case. I think, like I said, there is some good with it, but we also need to kind of scale back and look. Aesthetics, even though it's aesthetics, it's still medicine.
100%. And honestly, I look at those providers who've got all that time to dance around and do all these things.
Yeah.
And I'm like, how do you have time to practice medicine? I mean, okay, so I see you're a great dancer or you really are creative with your reels. That's great. But it takes a long time to do all that.
Yeah.
And, honestly, I just start to wonder, and I'm not saying they're all not busy, but I start to wonder how busy they really are in their clinical lives if they've got time for that. And I think what I really love about what you've created is that it really comes full circle, meaning that when providers are not getting their right fit of patients or clients, what starts to happen is they start to go have other issues. So meaning now they're starting to look for other ways to stay afloat.
Yeah.
And then they start discounting their prices and they
Yeah.
start to do a lot of silly things that they really shouldn't be doing either, but they go into panic mode. And
Yes.
every single provider I talk to, one of their first and foremost concerns is how to get more visibility and how to, market themselves appropriately and how to get more business in the door. Now, I would say that's one huge aspect of their problems, but here's the rest of the problems where I think I come in, or I know I come in, is they get the people in the door. They don't know how to retain them. They
Yeah.
don't know how to maximize their profitability. They don't know how to run a real business. They don't know how to staff properly and all of those other things that come. But again, you need the people in the door before we could even deal with any of those things later.
Yeah. And I agree, and I think it's what the industry has forced people to do, because honestly, having talked to a lot of injectors, like they don't want to do those reels. They don't want to do some of those things, but it's a matter of like, that's the only way that you're going to be found. And it's almost become this entertainment that has to be done in order to be viral or to get the views and to get all these things. And, the sad part about it is this is what the industry has had to conform to get that type of visibility. But if you ask those providers, they much rather have just educational content, right? Or
Mhm.
they much rather be able to like be a business owner, which some of them, they're great injectors and they realize being a business owner is a whole nother thing. So thank goodness for aesthetic business consultants like you who have been in the game, had your own practice. You're not just coming at it from like a business degree standpoint. You're coming at it from like being in the trenches standpoint. Like you understand what's necessary. And that's kind of how, I've taken Aesthetics HQ. Like I'm coming from that. I'm inside of this issue. I see it on both the provider side. I see it on both the patient side. And the only answer to it is to bring a platform that truly can be that answering place, that platform where people can learn unbiased material. Yes, I am a Galderma trainer, but every filler on the market is on my platform. I'm not here to make decisions. I'm here to put education in your hands so that you can make the best decision and you can make the best choice to find that provider that you best align with. Because, let's be honest, and I'm sure you're going to say the same thing. When you're in with a client, right, and you've got somebody who comes in for a consultation, you've got probably about 3 to 5 things you can talk to them about before overwhelming them.
Oh, yeah.
But we can do up to 30 or 40 procedures. When
Mhm.
do we have that opportunity to talk about that without feeling like you're constantly upselling? And nowadays, some of these, procedures we do are a little bit more intimate. You may have some sexual health, rejuvenation. You may have cellulite treatment, and patients they may feel embarrassed about talking about it. So the nice part about Aesthetics HQ is it literally acts like a menu. Nobody ever walks into a restaurant and says, "Hey, what do you guys have here?" We already know because we can look at the menu and we can see it. Aesthetics HQ, you've got your profile where it shows all of your procedures. So even though you were only able to kind of go over an aesthetic plan and hash out maybe 3 to 5 things to do, next steps, they can always see additional things that they can have a conversation with you and not feel like they're just putting themselves out there. Or they can see what lasers you have in your office. So you're not having to talk about a laser that you don't even have. I would get that all the time. Patients would come in, they're looking for a particular laser, whatever laser company did a great job on branding,
Yeah.
the ads, right? They're coming in and they're like, "Hey, what about this laser?" I'm like, "I don't have it." And they still want me to talk about it. Yeah, I know about the laser, but that's a waste of my
Time.
consultation time,
Yeah.
right? So
Well,
it's aligning.
sorry, I was going to say, I've had so many people ask me, like people who don't know what a med spa is, they're like, oh, well, what do med spas have?
Right.
I've had people ask me that when they don't really visit a med spa. And, the answer is like, that's like asking what specific restaurants to have. They all have different menus. So I like the analogy because it's so true. Some may be more heavily laser focused and others may be more, filler focused or, they all have their nuances that go into them. And it's impossible to know which one is the right one for you. And that's what I love about being able to peruse through all of the procedures that they have. Then you might have an idea of something you want, and then you know how to choose the right provider accordingly. Because if you just look at their website, you're not going to get all the information that you need on those procedures on the website.
Usually when you look at a website, it's pretty generic, right? Because there may be a turnover, there may be more providers, and they don't always update it. So here's the thing, you see a list of the services they offer on the website, but you don't know who actually does that. And this would happen in our clinic. Somebody would get placed with another person and they'd be like, "Oh no, Melissa only does that." So then guess what? Now that person has to be placed on my schedule when I have availability, because they didn't know, they didn't realize that not everybody does the same procedures, and that's normal. That's a
Mhm.
completely normal thing. And what Aesthetics HQ does is it prevents those mismatched patients from going into seeing providers, because when you're on my site or Aesthetics HQ, you're looking for a procedure, all you have to do is say find a provider, and it's finding a provider specifically for that service.
God,
So yeah.
that's so awesome. Because the other thing that's happened in the industry, which is a huge pet peeve of mine, is that it's everything is about the syringe or the units,
uh,
and that has become overly commoditized.
yes.
So, and for those of you watching out there who don't know what that means, what it means is that people in the aesthetic space or our consumers or our clients basically think that they're purchasing a syringe or a couple of units of Botox or Dysport or whatever the toxins they are to release the wrinkles. And really, they're not really purchasing a syringe, because I always joke and say, I could give you the syringe and what are you going to do with it, right?
Exactly.
Like,
Me behind the syringe. Exactly.
so what everybody needs to understand is, all the people watching who, may have had aesthetic procedures or maybe considering them in the future. It's not the syringe that's doing anything for you. It is the person with the knowledge and the artistry behind the syringe that's creating the beautiful results. So that being said, when we see these awful, awful faces that look contorted and don't look normal, well, it isn't that filler that did that. It is the person injecting the filler. So, so I've also had clients who've said, oh, I won't use that filler because my friend went somewhere and she
Right.
had that filler and she looks terrible. I'm like, no, that's not the filler. That is the person who injected that filler. So overdone and all those things are just, and I have my own take on why celebrities are so overdone.
Yeah.
But what is your take on that? That'll be like a interesting.
I think it gets down to people just don't know how to say no. And that
That's
was
what I think too.
and that was one of the things that I had to say in my practice a few times, because, honestly, my goal, and I'm sure like you and most injectors, is that we are really striving to keep you natural and to hold the hands of time.
Hmm.
And, unfortunately, in this space, you do have people that have mental health issues as well. And when you have clients that are already, distorted, or they don't look like the natural kind of anatomy should, it's your obligation as a provider to do them the best service. And that best service is not making money on that patient, but telling them no. And actually telling them that, you would benefit by having some of this filler, dissolve, because ultimately what we know about filler is that it does last a little bit longer. And so in some clients' minds, they're like getting their touch ups, on a yearly or every 2 years basis if they're just doing fillers, and not realizing that some of that old filler is there. And it's just a compounding issue. And some filler loves water. And you can get into this whole, I can go down this scientific pathway, but what happens over time is that filler can start to swell too, because it's bringing in the water molecules itself, which causes the distortion as well. So it could have looked well, but when patients are not, they don't understand when they're out there, they don't understand about filler, and they're just relying on the provider and maybe a deal that they found.
Hmm.
That's the one time you really bargain shopping. It's not going to be in your best interest. And that's the downside of what's happening right now, is because there's an overabundance of, providers. And the last study I read is that right now there's only single digit usage of aesthetic clients in the space of getting aesthetic treatment, because the other, let's say 90%, are afraid because they don't want to mess up and they don't know where to start. So what's end up happening is that a lot of people are competing for the same pool of patients. And by doing that, you're driving your costs down, you're driving your ultimate ROI down, and you're doing these little, like you said, these deals to drive clients in, but it's not benefiting you, and it's not benefiting the industry at all. So, part of our goal at Aesthetics HQ is to bring more aesthetic clients into the space by introducing the education that they need, introducing the clarity that they need. So that's the major buyer persona, is they need more education here. So, our goal is to truly help revitalize this industry, because people, you're not making the same money you were making before, because you're competing with the 5,000 other med spas that have just opened up.
Exactly,
And there's
exactly. And the industry is really struggling right now because it's just, I feel like it's a downward spiral to the bottom is what's happened. I mean, when I started, it wasn't the case at all.
no,
People were very, reputable. There wasn't this crazy discounting going on. And I've seen the industry over 2 decades. And what started to happen is that there was more competition. People started to become afraid,
yep,
and then they started to have scarcity mindset. Now what they do in retaliation for that is they give discounts, more deals, and not for nothing, but that's actually what the reps encourage you to do.
yeah, it is. And
So
to piggyback on that really quickly, in 2004 there were 500 med spas nationwide. Now there's like 500 per city. Okay, so that's exactly why you see this shift, and the shift in how providers are actually able to make an ROI now is the only way they're doing it is they're competing with that person next door to them and the person across the street from them. And it's really driven our industry into a place where if it continues to go this way, there's people that aren't going to survive in the space. It's
right.
just reality, especially when you're not sure how to run a business either. So it's like, and private equity starting to take over, big marketing dollars are coming in. So Aesthetics HQ, we're really trying to help level the playing field. So you're not out here spending all the dollars in Google trying to compete with these big marketing spas. You're partnering with us. We're spending the big bucks out there, and you have that opportunity of having that visibility channel so people can find you for your services.
Absolutely. And I love that. The other thing too is that, what I've seen, going back to the social media too, again, it's just with all the social media, everybody has gotten to a point where they're just, like I said, with the pricing and everything. And it just really has distorted the image of what an aesthetic professional should actually be.
Yeah,
And I don't love what's happened because of that, because it really just took the industry, which was in one playing field, I would say 20 years ago, and taken it down a lot,
agreed.
because now we're just competing on from a different vantage point. And I don't like what's happened to it. Where I think we should really be is just making sure that we offer the best and most aligned treatment for that patient or client who's come in the door, and actually maintain our sovereign pricing,
Yeah,
because the pricing should be not what is a comparison with the person next door or the people down the street. They should be about what you deliver, how you deliver it, and what feels good for you to do, because otherwise you have to make money. The reality is you have to make money. You have to cover the cost of the syringe, you have to cover the cost of your overhead, and you have to come out with a profit at the end of the day. Now, profit feels like a dirty word to a lot of providers, because they're like, I've heard it so many times, oh, I just want to help people. Well, you cannot do that if your doors are not open, is what I
absolutely,
tell.
absolutely, absolutely. And I love those hearts. I hear it too. And I think the biggest thing is it's truly just kind of, it makes me think about the real estate market, right? You remember when it was just blowing up, and then it just, the bottom fell out. And I think there is going to be a shift with the aesthetic industry. It's going to have a reboot. And this is what we're trying to do, is we're trying to be part of the solution for the reboot, because if it continues going down this pathway, people are not going to survive in their businesses.
Hmm.
And patients are not going to know where to get started, and you're still going to have this same competing pool of people that are getting aesthetic treatments, and they're hopping from one place to the next place, and everybody's trying to compete on price alone. So the goal is truly to bring this industry the transparency that is necessary, the education that is necessary, and so that patients can make those more educated decisions. They can start telling their friends. And that's the thing I always say, okay, you've got a great friend, but what happens if your friends never had that treatment? Are you not going to get anything done? It's like,
True.
there's tons of Facebook mom groups, and you're on there and you're asking questions, but like, let's think about it. One, what if they've never even had those treatments? And two, they're answering questions that they can't perform
Yeah, yeah,
procedures, right?
absolutely.
So it's like, again, back to the cardiology. Are you going on Instagram to find a cardiologist? Are you going on Facebook to ask about a heart stent procedure? No. The only industry that does that is aesthetics. Why?
Right.
Because it's been over commoditized. It's been
Totally.
made this commercialized thing, and people have to realize at the end of the day, it is still a medical procedure. And trust me when I say I've seen plenty of complications.
Hmm. Yeah.
TikTok reels, they're cute. All those things are cute. I get it. I am not judging any injector that has to do that, because that's what it's kind of come down to. But like, as a patient, when you're thinking about it, how are you truly going to find a vetted provider?
Right. And the other thing too is that they also have a lot of they've been conditioned in a certain way too. So let's just kind of call that out for a minute, because they've been conditioned to believe that they have no value.
Yeah,
Number one, that they're just a commodity like another syringe. They've been conditioned over the years to believe that. They've also been conditioned to believe that they have to hustle, hustle, hustle all the time.
right.
And, just do whatever is necessary to stay afloat. Well, when I consult, I actually disrupt that whole paradigm and tell everybody to do it differently,
Yeah,
because there is a way to be unique in this industry of so much noise, because there is really a hell of a lot of noise out there.
absolutely.
And there's only one way to cut through the noise, is to be yourself, own that space, and know that nobody else is you.
Right, right,
They really aren't. They may have the same tools, but they cannot be you.
right.
And that's what it used to be like way back when in the industry, because
Yeah,
people went to a provider because they liked that provider.
yeah,
Obviously the provider had to be skilled, but they liked something about that provider or that physician or nurse or whomever that they felt very comfortable with. And
absolutely.
that is a little old school, but I say let's bring the old school
Let's
back.
bring it back. And and with that, just talking about it too, it needs to be a community.
Mhm.
And the space has become so competitive, competing over algorithms, competing over, this patient getting a syringe here versus there. And the whole community thing is gone. And the way
Right.
I look at it, it's like there are plenty of patients out there. There are plenty of patients out there. They just haven't came into the industry yet, because
Mhm.
we need to have that solid path forward for them to know how to get started. But in that, like, don't you want to have somebody that you can lean on, or a couple of
Yes.
somebodies, if you're a solo business owner, that you can go and you can source and you can ask questions. Well,
Right.
that's exactly what Aesthetics HQ is. Right
Right.
now, we're patient facing. We have all of the information for the patients, but in the back end, we're building a whole ecosystem for providers to go in there to learn, to have a space to read the most latest papers. Like, I can't tell you how many times I go out and I train and people are like, well, what paper? And I know about certain papers because obviously I'm more in that educational space. But if you think about it, you got to be a business owner, you got to be an injector, you got to be a social media marketer, then you got to be a researcher trying to find all these clinical papers. You got to try to figure out what next laser is being launched in the US if you want to be on the cutting edge. Like, there's no place for this information. This
Right.
is why we're creating that ecosystem so that providers on your downtime, you can go into the Aesthetics HQ, read all the latest clinical papers, read all the latest things that are coming. Just truly make it easier. Find aesthetic business consultants like yourself if you feel like you're struggling with your KPIs and your business,
Mhm.
finding all of those resources that you need and not making you have to do that on your own because you already have enough that you're doing as an injector.
Totally.
I mean, setting realistic expectations is
Yeah,
enough in a day's time, right?
a
And
hundred
so
percent.
all
And
those other things.
I love that you said that about the ecosystem and the community because, again, it is so important. There's no better way to dominate a field of people, but except by fear and separation. And I
Yes.
feel that that's exactly what we have in the industry. Everybody's afraid of losing their businesses, losing their livelihood, and they're all separate in silos. So I love that Aesthetics HQ is creating that community. I'm also creating a community with my Aesthetic Profit Accelerator boot camp. So now people are coming together in different ways because that is huge and it's definitely lacking, even amongst female entrepreneurs. I actually did something cool that I actually want to just take a minute and just do a little, a little shameless plug. But I have always wanted to bring just not even just aesthetic providers or aesthetic entrepreneurs, but female entrepreneurs into a room because they struggle with a lot of different things. And I know about all the struggles as an entrepreneur for so many years. So I finally launched the first Unbound Collective and I had 30 women show up and they were so excited to be there. And they said they were looking for something like this, but there's nothing out there that people can really speak vulnerably in that way.
Yeah.
And I was thrilled to see that response. So just like that, we can curate these spaces in, for female entrepreneurs, we could do it in the aesthetics industry. And we need more of that. We need more community. I really think all of this happened after COVID, where everything just went online and our sense of community got a little, disheveled. And I think that's why we're in this position, unfortunately. Of course, COVID scared the bejesus out of everybody.
Right, right. Well, rightfully so too. But I wholeheartedly agree with you. And, I think that's the biggest issue and I always look at it like this. You know what? I treat everybody the way I want to be treated. So, like, if you're a provider, I'm going to help you as much as I can. Like, I want to make sure that you are as successful as you can. And that's the one thing I felt like me and you aligned on. It's not just your business doing well, it's you as a person doing well, right?
Exactly.
Holistically. So it's like, if you're not doing well, then you're not going to be successful in your business long term. In fact, you're going to burn out. So, how do we help that? You help by going in and you're not just looking at the business, you're looking at that person as a whole. I
Mhm.
help by bringing this ecosystem to make it easier for you. So, you don't have to spend all this additional time trying to source out this information and trying to make your business as successful as possible. Because I don't care how talented you are as an injector, you are going to need help to run your business successfully. Period.
Oh, yeah. And often they don't realize that they need help with that. And what happens is of course, they have plenty of education in the medical space and they are really, really good at what they do. But they almost can't fathom how many different moving parts there are in a business. And they start and maybe there's a few things and then there's more added onto it. Then they start to add maybe employees, they start to add lasers, they start to add more machines, and now you got to market those machines, you've got to have pricing structures for those machines. They don't realize how much work it is to get all
Absolutely.
of that stuff going. Then there's compliance issues,
Yep.
I mean, there's so
Oh
many
yes,
legal things.
lawyers and all of those things that I have learned myself. So it is, you are absolutely correct. And I think the biggest thing is too, they're not just business owners or injectors, and they go home and they're probably moms, they're probably wives, or they're trying to have a quality of life, if they're single. And a lot
Mhm.
of times the sacrifice is put onto the business, and everybody thinks there's going to be a tipping point. But that tipping point never comes if you don't have the tools to tip you over.
Exactly. That's beautifully said. It's so true because that's what I hear all the time. They go, I put my everything into this business. And listen, I did too. That's exactly how I know that this is not the right way to do it.
Right.
Because the bottom line is sustainability is key and consistency is key. And if you are not able to show up consistently and be in a good headspace and be calm and not frazzled and I mean people sense that energy. You can try to hide it all you want, but people sense that energy. Everybody knows it. And the reality is that there's no way that you're not going to burn out with that attitude of I put everything of what I've got into this business. I don't bother filling my cup, and I really start shaking that out of them day one as
Yeah,
soon as I start consulting with somebody. As soon as I hear that, I was like, nope, that is not the most important thing. You are the most important thing to your
absolutely.
business.
100%. And I think that's one of the biggest things that I'm sure you can identify too, even building your previous company and building your new company. In the process of building your company, if you're not building yourself, it's not going to thrive, right? Because
Exactly.
you are becoming a whole new individual that needs a whole nother skill set. And if you don't have the time to invest in yourself, then your company is only going to go as far as you are, right?
That's
And
very true.
so what we're trying to do, whether it's the aesthetic business consultant angle or aesthetics HQ angle, is literally try to put these tools in your lap. So it makes it easier for you to continue to grow alongside of your business so you could see your business grow. Because without that growth, it's just not going to happen. And I can say personally, I am not the same person I was a year and a half ago before I started Aesthetics HQ. I'm just not. Right. And I'm sure you can identify with that too. So it's like you've got all of this noise around you. You've got all the things that you feel like you have to do on social media. You go into your office, you're creating reels, you're seeing patients, you're coming home, running the books, log in your notes. You've got so many things. When do you have the opportunity to expand on your education? When do you have the opportunity to read these clinical papers? You literally have to source all of that stuff and make yourself do it. But if it's sitting there and you see these resources, it makes it a lot easier to go ahead and access those tools instead of having to find those tools and then put them to work. So we're just trying to make your life easier because I want to see you thrive, whether you are a bad a bad A girl boss or you are a
You can
man
say it. This is gloves off. You can say
a
it.
badass businesswoman out there. Like, I want to see you thrive. Like, I am all about girl power. I'm all about everybody being successful, but my heart burns true to see successful women in a space and really creating a space for other women to feel comfortable. Because the reality is sometimes patients won't go see another male doctor. They want to see a female doctor or a
Mhm.
female
True.
provider for these, intimate services that they may get, or these, more, you're basically telling people your insecurities. So not everybody feels comfortable enough going and seeing the opposite sex. But
That is so true.
it's just the reality. And even of color, women of color, like having a space where they can find other women of color. Sometimes they feel like they're not going to get treated to the same care because they don't understand their skin. And that's not true. I will tell you, I've
Right.
had some very talented, dermatologists and plastic surgeons who may be Caucasian, but they know skin of color backward and forward, and they've treated me, right? But, there are still some people that feel more comfortable finding those that they identify with, So I am here for you being as successful as possible. Like, I literally stepped out of the med spa space, stepped out of clinic so I can build this platform for both patients and providers because I want people to thrive and I want people to walk in their best self, whether it's that patient that has finally taken the courage to walk into that aesthetic journey, or it's that provider that now feels like they're supported and they can continue to thrive for the next 5 to 10 years before they retire. Like, our goals are the same. We want to see you successful and we want to see you do the best and safe. Safety is the key, right? So,
Totally.
it's just all about bringing that empowerment. And I always just say, hey, you're put on this earth for a reason. And I really believe my reason is for education. I'm sure you feel like the same. And to really look at people and to give them that help that's necessary because it's a hard industry right now.
Oh, it really is. And, I really feel very passionate about the personal development aspect because one thing I don't think people really realize is that there's a lot of personal development that goes into entrepreneurship. Just in managing the voice inside your head, the fears that come up, I
Absolutely.
mean, there's just so much that once you actually get involved in a personal development program, it really changes all that. So, I think with all of these things coming out in the industry to make things faster, more efficient for us to get patients and clients in the door, to get our resources more easily and in create a community so you have people to lean on.
Yeah.
All of those things start to improve the lives of not only the provider, but the patient. And then it creates a better synergy amongst the two. And I feel that there's some distrust that has occurred, over the years and some erosion of the trust between provider, patient. I think that that can start to build again because once we start fixing the problems, I think that that bond will reforge in the way that it used to be. I miss the days where it used to be really a very solid bond. I remember when I first started practicing medicine, and it was just so different. I was able to spend so much time with my patients. And even in the first 10 years, I could see how much that had changed because the insurance company started to create different guidelines and make it harder and harder for us to spend more time with patients. But again, in a similar way, the aesthetics industry has taken that same turn where we don't have as much time with the patients that we want. And that's really why I would say almost all of us go into these fields
Yeah.
because we love that connection with other people. We love having them vulnerable and talking to us about what's going on with them. And that is what I would like to see come back into the industry.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I agree. I mean, most people that I encounter, they have the right um, objective in mind, and that's to help people, right? But
Exactly.
it's all the other things that are starting to come in that help that really hurts that objective because, like you said, they're out there competing, their ROIs are going down, they have to see more patients to survive, and truly, it's just time for a change. And that's what we're here for, Aesthetics HQ. That's what you're trying to do, and our collaboration, we're really going to be able to help more people. And at the end of the day, I always say that you reap what you sow,
Sure.
right? And you're bringing in something that truly is designed to help people, and the heart is that people can see that and realize that this is nothing that's trying to take away from your social media fame. If you are famous on social media, congratulations. But
Yeah.
what we want to do is we want to provide this centralized platform. We want to provide you the tools. We want to provide you that personal development so that you can really thrive and maybe not have to do some of these silly things anymore. Because I can tell you right now, probably majority of the ones I talk to, if I told them, hey, guess what? You never have to do a TikTok reel or something silly, they would be happy. I know I
Exactly.
would be, if I were out there doing that stuff because most people
Totally.
don't enjoy it.
There was a brief moment in time I did a few of those and I was like, this isn't me, and I stopped. I like doing more educational content. So I do videos quite a bit, but they're more like, hey, this is what you could do. Like I like that stuff, but I am not gonna be dancing on the reels and all that. I mean,
Me neither. Dancing, that means we've got a couple of drinks in our hand and we're in like
yeah, it's like
a
that's just not the same thing. So where's the best place for either providers or patients to find you guys online? I actually forgot to get that from you.
Yeah, so they can find us at aestheticshq.com, and that is the website. And there's a special button at the top that says for providers. And if you are a patient client looking for treatments, hop in our AI assistant and she will help you, and she'll help you even find providers in the areas. Right now, we are in Jacksonville and Orlando, and we are expanding. We're getting ready to expand down to South Florida. So stay tuned. And of course, this has a nationwide growth trajectory. We're just strategically opening up markets as we do it, and California too,
Yes.
with Dr. Kalpana over there. So we are really excited about our partnership with you as well. You can find us on Instagram. Unfortunately, the aesthetics part was gone, so it's Aesthetic HQ on Instagram and on Facebook as well, Aesthetics HQ. And me, I'm on LinkedIn, and so is Aesthetics HQ. So we are all over. We're really just starting our social media component because my main thing was really getting that educational background, backdrop done. And like I said, proud to say we have over 400 procedures, content, medically vetted content on the site, even down to this most recent lasers that have been released. So we're really trying to stay up and up on it. And if there's something on there that you have in your practice and we don't have, don't worry, because we can easily build that page for you and get you loaded, so you can be found for those exact services.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much. I'm excited to have you guys sponsor my Aesthetics Profit Accelerator workshop. I'm going to pop that link up in just a second. But before we run out of time, I wanted to tell you thank you so much, because this has been such an enlightening interview. And I feel that, everybody has a better understanding of the industry, whether they've been a part of it or not. I just wanted to be able to give a great overview, and I feel like you did a fabulous job doing that. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for bringing this in this space. It's so necessary, and truly thank you for being who you are, because it's the one thing that I will tell you, working with Dr. Kalpana, like, her spirit and her soul aligns with mine, and you could tell she has a genuine interest in wanting to help people. So if you're looking for an aesthetic business consultant, I would not hesitate contacting her, because her main goal is to make sure that you thrive.
Oh, thank you. We all have the same goal. We want all of these women to thrive and be prosperous. So, well, thank you for spending your Sunday night with us tonight. And can't wait to see what all we can create together. And you have a fabulous evening.
You too. Thank you so much.
Bye. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed that. I thought it was very informative. I'm running out of time, but I'm just going to pop this up real quick on the screen for just a minute. You guys will have a chance to be able to see it again. That's the Aesthetic Profit Accelerator Bootcamp. It's coming up in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and it is going to be from August 7th through 10th. So it's only for aesthetic providers, not for clients. So if you're not an aesthetic provider, probably will be of no interest to you. So I will see you guys next week for another episode of Gloves Off.